All right, thank you for listening to this podcast. This episode of Literally is sponsored by Lexicon and Line. Case, tell us a little something about Lexicon and Line.
Lexicon and Line, it does three things. They are communications consultants. They teach professional business writing and speaking courses, and they are research and data evaluation experts.
And you can find everything about Lexicon and Line at lexicononline.com. Please give them a visit, and thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast, Lexicon and Line.
Welcome, everybody. This is Case Johnston, and this is the Literally Podcast. We are broadcasting from 25th Street in the Monarch in Ogden, Utah, in Banyan 1. Okay, I got it right. Good. Today we're talking with poet Adrienne Christian. Adrienne's work she's been published very widely. She's adjunct faculty at the University of Texas, Austin, and author of 3 poetry books. Author of the 12023 Woodmont Avenue, which came out in 2013, Proper Lover, which came out in 2017, and Worn, which is coming out in next year. So this is good news to hear another book coming out. Pick it up. We need to pick it up. I got to read about 15 poems from all 3 of her books today, and just to start off, what would you like to share first with us? Because I figured we'll read 3 or 4 poems throughout and then talk about them.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about that actually. Yeah. So collections. The first one, 12023 Woodmont Avenue, that was my address of my girlhood home growing up. And so that book is all about family. So my thing is that I write love, in particular Black love, and it's not always romantic love. Sometimes it's familial love. So that's what that book is about. And just the stuff that goes. It's like the stuff that goes on in one's childhood when it. Yeah. So that was the first one. The second one is the one that I have here now, A Proper Lover. This one is also love, but it is one woman's journey to not only find, but become a proper lover in light of what's been done to her. So like it goes in sections to say, okay, this is what happened, in the early stages of her life. And then this is how she progresses. And it goes through college and all the way to marriage. So this one's A Proper Lover. I really love this book. This is my baby. I love them all. Yeah. But the third hasn't come out yet. That'll be out on the 1st of April next year. And that one happened quite by accident. I was I wanted to edit an anthology about poems that all featured clothing. And in collecting those poems, it started making me write my own clothing poems. So Warren ended up a collection of poetry about Black life, Black love, and all of them include clothing in some way, whether it's a belt, hat, or a jumpsuit.
Right. No, that's great. So, with this podcast, as I like to tell all of the authors that I bring on, I would like to talk least. So if you would want to jump in, read, and then just talk about it. I like to celebrate the authors and not my own voice. So go for it. But I'm with you. I have to say that the Proper Lover poems, like I read them this morning and then I read them this afternoon again, and those ones stuck with me throughout the day. Like really, they all did, and I loved the poems from the first book and the forthcoming book, but the Proper Lover ones, I had, and I don't know if this was your intent, but I had a legitimate like physical response to how authentically like real they were when it came to romantic love, and it's not always it's not the movie romantic love, it is, even if it's physical, it's very, very corporeal, and it's like very, and so they stuck with me all day long. And of course I love the other poems too, and I want to hear those, but I have to say the Proper Lover poems, they had a visceral reaction
Thank you.
Yeah, because they're real, about real people, so instead of like romantic movie stuff, so
Thank you for saying that. That means so much to me. The book has done well and is doing well. It came out in 2017, but it's still selling pretty well, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, well, make sure before we get off this, we need to tell people where they can get them.
Okay, so I'll tell you now. Okay. It's my.com, AdrienneChristian.com. Adrienne is like Rocky's wife, Adrienne, but it's spelled the French way. And then my last name, Christian, is just like a follower of Jesus Christ. So AdrienneChristian.com. And then that'll give you links to see some of my work online. And then also links to Amazon where you can actually buy the books.
Perfect. That's perfect. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Yeah.
But then how about what do you think about me reading a poem and then maybe just like talking a little bit about the poem, my inspiration, maybe like the craft in it? Like, I'm not sure what you want.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah. Like I said, with this podcast, when I started it 3.5 years ago, my goal was to introduce writers to readers and to celebrate the writers and not listen to myself. So, yeah.
Okay. I love what you said about introduce writers to readers.
Mm-hmm. That's the goal.
And you've been for 3.5 years?
Mm-hmm. And when I saw you pop up on Twitter, I was like, I know her. So I thought this is perfect. So, and it's great news.
Okay, so this one's called Lipstick. Morning in the mirror remind me of my mother in her panties, bra, slip, and lipstick. How I'd sneak small sips of her tea to get some. So this poem is actually the opening poem in the collection. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I did it that way is because I wanted to set the tone to show what it's going to be about. Like I said, the first chapter is about the things a woman learns about love and womanhood. She really gets them from her mother, right? Mm-hmm. Because who's the first person to teach a woman about her sexuality? It's her mother, whether it's something like, this is how you put on lipstick. This is how you put on a bra. This is how I remember my mother buying me perfume and telling me this was how I would wear perfume. It was called lacing it to make it last the entire day. And so, I mentioned wearing lipstick, and she would have this cup, and she drank coffee. It meant to be a coffee poem, but tea just worked out better here. Mm-hmm. And so she would drink this Maxwell House coffee, and it would have her beautiful lipstick on there. And I'd want to go and put my lips on it just so that I could have lipstick,
Mm-hmm.
And then the reason that I end the poem, of course, with "to get some" is is the play on "to get some." Mm-hmm. On one hand, to get some lipstick, right? On the other hand, I was going to be getting to the age soon where I would be getting some action, right? And if I was going to be getting some action, then I had to have a blueprint for that, which is essentially what moms do for their daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I'm guessing that you purposely put that as the first poem because it really is kind of a nexus of childhood and womanhood, right? I mean, just to get it started.
Yeah, absolutely. And my mother, I had a really beautiful mom. And so I would just kind of marvel mm-hmm. when she was getting ready because she was just that fine, Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'll read one from another one from that section.
Okay.
And this called Her Torn Half. This is the last one in the first section. I always knew when my daddy called to say he wasn't coming home. My mother would shout, "Again?" and then demand to know how late, and then resign herself to a humbler tone. "I'll leave your dinner on the stove." She'd then stomp off to the kitchen, take a fistful of ice from the freezer, throw the ice cubes in the ceramic mug and pour the wild turkey on top. She'd light another one of Mommy's special cigarettes before the previous one had burned, twirl her asphalt-colored curls around her slender index finger, and stare past me when I asked what's the matter. And yesterday, when you called to say you weren't coming home, I found my way to the kitchen, ripped open a sack of chips, fetched the bottle of gin from under the bed, and took my seat there on the floor, and thought of my mother, her, a fraction of a woman, and me, her torn half. That one's called Her Torn Half.
With that placement too, you said that's the first section of the book.
Yeah.
So where do you move from there? I mean, is this kind of, do you move farther into young adulthood, or is it adulthood when it comes to the structure?
So I'm glad you asked that. Mm-hmm. So I'll just tell you how the book goes, okay? Mm-hmm. So the first section is called In Her Lipstick, Bra, and Panties. It's like my mom in her lipstick, bra, and panties, and also me and mine, right? And then the next section is called In Love with a Coworker. And that just is because these were all poems that happened to be about someone I was dating at work or wanted to be dating at work. So there's that. So I'm an adult, to answer your question at that point.
Okay.
But then I double back to a section called Girls, which is where I am in teenage love. Again, my mother is present in those poems in that, as a 15-year-old girl, sometimes or 15-year-old anybody, that's kind of the stage where you start getting into it with mom and dad about your dating choices and your what you're starting to do with your body. Like, I remember her catching me kissing this boy, and she was so mad. And, but when you're 15, and biology starts to kick in, it's really hard to stop that ocean.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that wave of air starts. So that section is called Girls. I'll read just some stuff from there too. The next one is called The Book of Lovers. And this is actually what the original book was going to be called, but then I changed it to Proper Lover because of a, what's the name of that show? Jon Snow, Game of Thrones episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the wildling was with Jon Snow, and they had just made love, and he did a really fantastic job, And she told him, she said, Jon Snow, you're not like other guys, you're a proper lover. And I felt that, and I was like, proper lover. So that's when I changed the title from The Book of Lovers to A Proper Lover. And so this is just like, some relationships that stand out with me. Again, once I was an adult. I'll read you some stuff from there. The next is not so much of a timeline, but this one's called The Book of Breakups. So it's breakups from back in the day to present day. Those are hard to avoid in love. The next is called Me Married. Then there is Affair. And then the final section is erotic poems. Okay. So
So the book grows up, as it goes. Yeah, that's really I've got to get a copy. I'm gonna get a copy. I loved them. Yeah, let's hear some more. I'd love to hear some more.
The book grew up. Yes, That's interesting that you say that. Okay, so this is called Love Making When You're Trying to Get a Book Deal.
Okay.
Okay. I love this poet turned publisher, but I can't slide down on his wood and ride because two ladies said do not. When you are seated at that table, let no soul say you screwed yourself into that position. Hear me, girl? I am not at that table yet, so we grind. He kisses me, he kisses mine. I tell him stop, we grind. He holds me, he hugs me, he's hung. He touches me where I tell him no, please quit it, or really I should leave. We grind. He won't let me go. He hides my purse. He says, please. I say, please stop. But it's so hard, a grown man begging me to do what we should. We grind. He pulls me onto his lap and I can hardly keep my face from it. But I must, and I will, till I get myself 2 books first, say the ladies, and they know because they are already where I am trying to get. So we grind. His blue top sheet in the ladies' words, the only things keeping us from love. while I write. He's got 1,000,000 books he lends me. I write 1,000 poems I show him. He wants me at important parties, but I will not be seen out with this man. He wants me, he wants us, and I want him, but I want books more.
I love that one. That's a great poem. And honestly, what an insight into this thing we're doing as writers, you know? I mean, and it could, I mean, and like, I mean, that could be taken so very literally, everything in it, but it can also be taken very, very kind of symbolically of all the things writers, you know, and I'm not talking sexually, but all the things writers would do for those 2 books, you know, the way in which we put ourselves out there. And I mean, Twitter is a grinding thing, and Facebook is a grinding thing, and Instagram is a grinding thing, and submissions are a grinding thing. And, you know, with that continual kind of repeat of that word got me thinking that, I mean, as writers, obviously the literal sexual kind of mentions in there are common, happen, and then all of a sudden the symbolic ones too. I mean, what it is, this career that we've chosen.
Yes. And so I learned that. So actually, like I was just like small talking with one of the professors actually at Pacific when I was there. And she was really kind. She invited me into her bedroom and we just chit-chatted like girlfriends. Actually, there were 2 women. And the only reason I won't name them is because I don't even know if they would want to be named. So I just won't say anything. But both of them were so gracious and invited me into their rooms and we hung out. And it just sort of came up. They said, you know, and I don't say this, you know, in a haughty way, but they just said, you know, you're a beautiful girl and you're going to start getting these men who are coming to you and they're going to tell you that, you know, they can get you a deal if only you'll do X, Y, and Z. And you can't do that. Okay. Not saying that you would, but just know that you can't do that, because when you get to the table, let nobody say that you effed your way there. When you get to the table, it has to be because you wrote your way. And, you know, like I was really at first like a little bit offended by that, because I was like, oh, why are you telling me that? Do I look like somebody who would sleep with someone to get a gig, you know? But that wasn't the spirit of the conversation.
Right,
it was mentored. It was mentoring.
Well, and that there are predators. I mean, it's just calling out that it's very predatorial, and they're saying watch out, not because of you, but watch out because of them. And obviously we've seen that within the last 7-8 years with the Me Too movement, the predatorial habits of many of these men exist. And so it sounds like a warning, not about you, but about what's out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And then the tough thing is that, you know, what happens when you are a woman and you do fall in love with a man who has a higher position? Then, you know, what do you do? Keep pushing, you know, keep saying, no, we can't have a romance until, you know, 10 years. Yeah. when so it was tough in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And mostly as men, we get to avoid that. You know, we're not thrown in those situations. I mean, I know that it happens, but the rarity of it compared to what women must have to go through, it's just so small, you know? So I love that poem. That's a great poem. I'm going to get this book.
Thank you. Yeah. And it's a blessing that you don't have to go through it, because it is hard.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And, you know, if you don't do it, then you are considered the B word, not a team player.
Right.
So, yeah. So let's see. Up next, here is one called I Always Fall in Love. And this is from the section Girls. So here is me as a young woman, always falling in love. And some people will accuse me of, when I was a girl, being a little bit boy crazy. I always fall in love. I always fall in love. I mean, always fall in love. I'll say to a guy, this is strictly platonic. Meanwhile, I'll be in love. I always fall in love. I'll talk of fuck and suck and cock and prick, but think of love. I always fall in love. I'll test him with my threesome talk to see if he's in love. I always fall in love. His wife, his kids, his home, who cares? I like to be in love. I always fall in love. My smile, it never seems to fade. I dress and perfume myself each day whenever I'm in love. I always fall in love. I'll say things like, be careful, boy, you're going to fall in love. Meanwhile, it's me in love. I always fall in love.
I just like the way she reads it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like the way she delivers it is telling.
Really good.
Yeah.
So this one is from the section called The Book of Lovers, and it's called September 19th. The man I love bought me nothing for my birthday. He says he has no money. Though he smokes cigarettes, smokes weed, stops daily at Dunkin' Donuts, and has cable, he has no money. Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to start cracking up at that one, but you know. Yeah, so this is a true story. You know, my boyfriend wrote me this letter that was like a beautiful birthday letter that was saying, hey, I'd love to buy you something great, but I don't have any money. And I was like, really? Because I thought you were buying a 40 sack of weed every Thursday and Sunday.
Yeah, I know where your money's going.
Yeah. Cigarettes and and lottery tickets and cable and all kinds of things that just made me go, hey, wait a minute. I'm sure you figured out that September 19th is my birthday. That's why that's the that's the title of the poem. Let's see. From the Book of Breakups, this is called Full Moon. I'll read a series of these because I really like this section. Okay.
Sounds great.
Okay. Full moon. Full moon. Time to start an argument. You wet them. There is always coffee available at 4 o'clock in the morning, be it at a gas station, a truck stop, or at your cruel and unusual mother's. Something's always brewing, and you always stop to have a cup, to have a cigarette, and to wash your dick in the sink with those brown paper towels that can chafe if you don't wet them. You do wet them, don't you? Wet them and cover up their scents with cigarettes, soap, and coffee. That way, when you come home and give me a quick kiss on the lips, I can say you taste like cigarettes. And that way, when you pee, as I stand there brushing my teeth, I can say you smell like coffee.
That was one that you sent me earlier that I read today, you know, and I wanted to ask more about that one because now is this still in the breakups one? Okay, so I was wondering about because early on within the poem, you know, we start with there's always coffee available, but we end with it's so that he can smell like coffee, right? Is that one of those kind of delve into how senses bring back a certain lover or bring back a certain kind of person or your relationship? That's the way I saw it, just because, you know, I mean, I can smell a perfume and it's from a girlfriend from 35 years ago, and all of a sudden I'm back in, you know, there.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what it is. So yeah, scents can be used to incite nostalgia. Mm-hmm. Which is kind of a more beautiful way that they can be used. Mm-hmm. They can also be used to cover up the truth about something. Mm-hmm. You know, if my partner was out and having sex with someone, mm-hmm. and I knew that would be the case if he came home and he smelled like a woman, then he would stop and get these things that he knew would cover up the scent, mm-hmm. like, you know, getting some hand sanitizer in the men's bathroom and kind of swabbing off, you know?
Yeah. And then,
I mean, I'm thinking about this now, but it's not funny because I almost choked up crying Yeah, when I was reading that, because the other thing about it is, when the person thinks that you're fucking stupid. Can I say fucking?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
And it's like, I'm not that dumb. Like most people after an 8-hour shift of work don't come home with the rest of their body smelling like work, but their penis smelling like so like, I'm not stupid, but okay. So if you want to play the stupid game, fine. Then I just know what you're doing,
Right.
And the reason I mention the cruel and unusual mothers is because I remember, not to speak ill of my grandfather is dead, but one thing that he would do is he would allow my uncle and dad to see their mistresses at his house, and I hated that.
Yeah.
I won't say I hated it about him. I hated it about the situation because he was so amazing and wonderful in every other way. And I couldn't understand why he would allow something like that to, yeah.
And you wrote about that in another poem, right? Is that the same uncle that you wrote about in another poem that you sent me earlier, or was that different?
So that one's coming from Warren.
Oh, okay. That's coming from
So
Warren.
this is like I talk a lot about my maternal side, and then Warren I talk more about the paternal side.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, so maybe one more from this section. This one's called "One Day I'm Going to Wake Up." For a while, there'll be nothing but silence. Fewer dresses in the closet, fewer dollars in the bank. There'll be a space where there once was a body, and clean where there once was a mess. On holidays, the incoming and outgoing calls will be halved, and there will be no hidden gifts to go rummaging through the closet for. You'll find another woman maybe and be just as good to her. You'll take her to meet your mother maybe, and your mother will like her better. And I'll find a flat somewhere and buy a dog. I'll get my figure back because I won't eat, have never-ending migraines because I won't sleep. But one day I am going to wake up and it won't hurt anymore.
Is that the last one of the breakups? The last poem?
It's not the last one in the section, but I can move on if you want me to, or do you want to hear something else?
That just felt like a lot of closure in that one, or looking for that. And so I was wondering if it was the end of the section because you're saying, I can move on.
Just the end of that breakup, but you keep getting your heart broken.
Yeah.
So let me read you one more, my favorite one from that, okay? Because I really love foodie and I love to cook. And so sometimes my work has food in it. Okay, so this one's called Bread and Wine, and this is the last one I'll read from this section. Bread and wine. The bread and the wine. I always reach for them when the man I've been baking for no longer wants my cakes. It's sad, the way I stop running, weightlifting, drinking water when I get written off. The way I get drunk and round and call him and call him and call him when I know he's laughing at me. It's bad that bread is for life and that wine is for good times, but I take them and use them for filling the cupboards inside my lonely kitchen.
Yeah.
Some emotion.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm reading a lot of sad stuff. I don't think this book is sad, but maybe I just chose to read those.
Whatever you want to read. If you this is a thematic podcast. You're just setting your own theme.
Okay. So I'll read letters. This is coming from the section called Affair. All of your love letters to me have the date, have the subject, have my name and yours, have punctuation, right spelling, have your signature, have dark ink, have page 1 of 1 or 1 of 2, depending on how little you say, because you never write me paper and pen, just emails I print out and call them letters. This one's called Me Married. which is a little bit of an explanation of why there is a section called affair.
Right. they go together.
Yeah. Me, Mary. Imagine Aphrodite's girdle tucked into the back of her closet under crochet quilts and mothballs in a plastic bin bought on sale at one of those discount wholesalers. Instead of casting her spell on some adoring young man, imagine her washing sheets and folding towels. It's like a rooster in socks, a penny with a hole in its center, a Tweety bird flying backward toward a tabby cat's nest on Super Bowl Saturday morning. I was Aphrodite, goddess of little nighties and nighttime, goddess of little black dresses and a little bit of wine before checking into a suite for the weekend. My girdle was incense, my navel was wine, one toss of my hair and that man was my dinner. Instead, I'm married these days, wearing sensible shoes, making crock pot meals, doing it missionary.
I love the concrete in that one. You know, the concrete details at the beginning, you know, because it, you know, we get that sense of adventure, and then missionary at the end just really feels sad. You know, and then we get the sense of adventure from all these wonderful concrete details, and you know, even picking the word suite instead of, you know, checking into a hotel room, but checking into a hotel suite, it just pushes that. It pushes that sexuality and that lustfulness and kind of the excitement of it all. Even just the word "sweet" changes that poem. Like that poem would be a different poem if you said checking into a hotel room. You know, because a room can almost feel, you know, that's where parents and kids check into. But you know, it's like, but if you're checking into a suite that has that tangible, that taste to it, you know, the double entendre of the taste of all of that sexuality and that experience and that excitement. And that's just my take on it, but that's still, to me, that's what stood out with that poem. And then it shifted to missionary, you know.
Thank you for saying that. You're so perceptive. You're right. And that's what, you know, I got when I was at Pacific was, you know, I learned how to write poetry there. Mm-hmm. And I learned that every line is a poem and every word also. Mm-hmm. So be cognizant, be mindful of, choose the right word is what I'm trying to say. And so thank you. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Well, I tell my students that all the time is we need to write our stories and our essays as if we were poets, because poets, every single word, every single space, every single hard return means something. And so I tell them that don't give yourself the freedom to not look at every sentence and in every word, because the only sentence that people are going to remember are the bad ones. And so I love the way that poets do it.
I haven't heard that. I have to write that down. The only sentence that people are going to remember are the bad ones.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So even though if you circle one bad sentence with great sentences, that bad sentence is going to it's going to look lazy, especially in, you know, these days, like with essay writing, 1,200 words. If you want to get published, 1,200 words, that's the sweet spot. And that's not a lot of words. And an editor's going to see one bad sentence in 1,200 words can ruin an essay.
You're right. You're right. I'm so glad too that you tell your students that you know, that they should write like poets or bring some poetry into what they're doing, because I used to have a love-hate relationship with poetry, mm-hmm. because I felt like it was the least the least read, the least bought, the least it made the least money out of all of the genres, mm-hmm. you know, fiction writers, you know, and so but now, and so I really had a problem with that. But now that I write prose, now that I write fiction and nonfiction too, let me tell you, it was no mistake that I learned poetry first. Mm-hmm. It was really, and like a lot of editors who read my work always comment on flow, tone, pacing, it's just all things that I learned in poetry. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you're right, and I'm now glad that I did it that way.
Yeah, I always make my prose students read poetry just for that reason. We start off with poets. We start off with Dorianne Locks. We start off with her and she's got great craft talks about how every word counts, and I always infuse those into my lessons because I think prose writers feel as if they can get away with something. And me too. I get lazy. Of course I get lazy with my prose at times. But I feel like especially newer writers of prose, they feel like they can just give themselves a break and not everything has to be perfect. But that's not true at all. So I actually start my mornings with poetry before I write. I read poetry. Yeah. I don't write poetry. I'm scared to death of it. But I read poetry before I write because it gets me to the rhythm of words. And so I don't start with other people's prose. I'll start with poetry. And with your book, I'm going to start with that too. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to give us our little, this is Case Johnston. This is the Literally Podcast. Today we're talking with Adrienne Christian, poet and writer, about her 3 books.
Okay. Yeah. So since you mentioned sweet, let me just read you a poem called Insurance. It's also about a hotel. And this one's called Affair. Okay. So I once knew a man who met me and liked me and Googled me and read everything on my blog, even bought the books I'd written I was reading, even looked up the epigrams in the epigrams authors' biographies. We meet at the only embassy suites with covered parking. It's the only time I've ever put my ring in my ashtray. The only time I've ever worn period panties. And
I read that one today. That one stuck with me too because of the last line. Because it and you correct me because I don't have period panties. But but that last line seemed to go against the previous line about putting the wedding ring into the ashtray. Could you?
I'm so glad you said that, because, and this is why it's called insurance, because a lot of times this is a trick that ladies do when we want to do a little something with the guy, but we don't want to go all the way.
That's what I was wondering.
We know we won't take our clothes off if we're wearing ugly underwear. So that's what it's, about. Although I did find a way to get around that. You could just take your underwear off, roll them up in tissue and throw them away, and then you're ready.
Yeah, no, that's what I was wondering, if it was insurance, where that last line was bringing it back to the title of insurance. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you about it. I wanted to ask you if that's what you were thinking.
It's a thing we do, wear ugly panties. And that was just a joke a minute ago. I've never thrown my underwear away in a hotel bathroom.
Yeah. But now I know if I need to, I can. I've learned something today. This is good.
Get out of here.
Adrienne, I have a quick question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not on camera, so yeah, I'm like off camera, which you can't see me. It's like this voice in the darkness over here. First of all, this is my first time experiencing your work, and I love it. So thank you so much. You're not afraid to use language at all, which is great, colorful language. I know I have been hesitant in the past, and I'm wondering if that's because I grew up in Utah, even though I'm not even affiliated with a religion, and especially the predominant one here. So I'm wondering what your background was, and if you're ever hesitant to use certain words, or if it's just something that you're naturally okay with.
That's a great question.
Okay, so I'm so glad that you asked that, because this is like one thing that I grapple with. Like, a lot of people say to me, "Oh, Adrienne, you said something really bold," or "You really took it there," or "You didn't censor." And I have censored, and I still come away with something that is a little shocking to people. And I don't mean to, because one thing about this book is that people like it across sort of like generations, like when students read it, they like it. And then, also, women who are grandmother age also like it and find something in it. And, people will talk about the language. And the reason that I put the language in there is just because I think it's better to tell the truth. Like the truth hits harder. Like I could say, if I could write in one of my poems, I'm having a conversation with my man, and we're getting into it, and he tells me, take out my thing. Like he didn't say take out my thing. He said, take out my other thing. And so I just kind of say it because that was the truth. So that's why I put, and then I think too, like a lot of people say that one thing that's working in my poems is voice. And I think that's because the voice isn't fake. It's usually the real word or, or like a synonym that rhymes better or has better alliteration or something like that. But, you mentioned Dorianne earlier, Dorianne Laux. She was one of the poets who, she also writes with language. She writes sex. She writes marriage. She writes very honestly. And she was the one who told me, you just need to be honest and say that. Now, that said, you asked about my background. Well, I grew up in Catholic school, so I wasn't allowed any of these words. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that now I can do with them what I want. So, yeah. So I like putting them in there, but recently, sometimes I wonder if I go overboard or if I've gone too far with the language, because I was recently asked for a poem for an anthology that is going to be marketed and sold in schools, and the editor actually dropped me a little line and said, hey, this is going to be in school, so keep it clean. And I felt terrible because I was like, I'm not dirty, like I'm not, my work is like not porn or anything like that. Right. And I was really deeply hurt. I was really, really deeply hurt by that comment. But then I was reading through the collection. I was like, damn, you're right. There's nothing in here that's suitable for a middle schooler. The first collection and the last one are not like that, but yeah, A Proper Lover, it's just the nature of the book. So I just had to go there.
Well, and like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I loved it because it's real. I mean, it's between real people with real bodies, and with things that real people say, especially when they're comfortable with each other, right? I mean, like, people, when they get comfortable with each other, their dirty side can come out, and it's not, but it's not dirty. It's just, hey, this is what I like. What do you like? Let's do this together. And that's when people are in love or where they're comfortable, that's the conversations they have. I mean, there's laughter during sex. There's like missteps. There's all these things that once you're there, it's not like, oh, babe, I love you so much, let's make love. No, it goes out the door. And you're bringing the real things into it. And that's not, like you said, that's not dirty. That is just using the exact words, using the real words. And that's why the poem stuck with me so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That means a lot to me. Yeah. And so when my students come to me and their work says, then he said, let's make love, I'm like, I don't think that's what he
yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think too that like you said, that's true intimacy. Mm-hmm. When
there's
you
like
say
one guy who said that. Like there's like one guy. Somebody said it somewhere.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's true.
Yeah. He's a French guy.
Yeah. The French guy, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's that is intimacy where you can be honest with a partner. And you can say any of that stuff.
I included this section affair because Kwame Dawes, who I also met at Pacific when I was there getting my MFA in contemporary poetry, when he read an early draft of this, he said that that my character is too she needs a shadow. So, don't make her be only the person who has had her heart broken and who's broken in some ways by her upbringing, but you need to give her a shadow. And so that's why I wrote that affair section in there, to sort of balance out that personality and show me, the speaker as more of a well-rounded individual. And a lot of times, affairs are part of marriages. They're part of relationships. They're part of love. Not all of them are always, illicit. Sometimes you're married to person and you don't realize it until you have an affair. I mean, like, I'm not trying to make light of anybody who has been cheated on. I have been before, and I know what that feels like. I just said all that to say that there's more than one way to look at an affair.
Absolutely. You know, there's you read about people who have work affairs, but they're not doing anything, but they are sharing the things with their work affair that they're not sharing with their partner, and that's just another way to have an affair. I mean, it runs the gamut. So yeah, I love what you said about that.
Thank you. And a lot of times, statistically, in the instance that you just mentioned, an emotional affair is way harder. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to just, go to a strip club or bachelor party and get a little too wild and mm-hmm. do something you regret. It's quite another thing day after day after day to have intimate conversations with another person, mm-hmm. to have intimacy with a coworker,
mm-hmm. or whatever, somebody.
Yeah. Even somebody on the internet, somebody on
right, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so this will be from the last section. This is called erotic poems, and all of a sudden I am a little bit shy to read. I'm a little bit shy. I'm getting shy.
Don't be.
Would you be mad if I just chickened out and said, "Oh, I'm too afraid to read them in front of you"? Because I know you, and we go way back, and I'd feel weird telling you some of these.
No, it's up to you.
You gotta get the book.
Yeah, I gotta get the book then.
You gotta get the book.
That's So that was a teaser.
Okay, yeah, that was a teaser. So that erotic poem section is in there, but since you don't mind, I'll just take a.
No, this is for you. I wouldn't push you there at all. So that's, fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, this was probably, and I know Brandon's smiling over there, but this is probably one of the easiest and most fun podcasts we've had in years. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your work and reading to us. And sometimes with poets, they read their poems and then they're just deadpan, and then they don't talk about them. And I try to I have to work really hard to get them to speak about their poetry. With you, it was just so nice to listen to you read it and then tell us about it. That's, if I could have any poet on here, that would be my ideal podcast, because I would rather have you as the poet read it and then share what it's about than me trying to literary criticism it, so I really appreciate your openness with the reading, and I had a lot of fun. It's great to see your face. It really, really is.
You too, and that means so much to me. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. I'd love to come back another time to talk about poetry or anything,
We'd love to have you. We'd absolutely love to have, especially when Warren comes out. We need to do that again. But honestly, we'd love to have you anytime. And Brandon's nodding his head. So, we'd love to have you. Thanks. We shouldn't have taken this long to do it. I just, I saw you on Twitter and I was like, I know Adrienne, she's got a new book coming out. That's fantastic. So yeah, reach out. If there's any time you just want to come and talk poetry, we can talk poetry. Maybe we get 2 or 3 other poets on here and we just go like crazy and have what do they call it? Round table discussion. Yeah. Something like that.
That is a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
I love that idea. I look forward to that. And it was such a pleasure meeting you guys, or not meeting you guys, but thanks for having me on. I really, really appreciate it.
I'm so glad. Thanks for working out with us with our technical difficulties at first. Yeah.
I'm easy.
Yeah, but let's do it again. I'll think of a way that we can have you back on for sure.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All right. Have fun.
Bye.
All right, thank you for listening to this podcast. This episode of Literally is sponsored by Lexicon and Line. Case, tell us a little something about Lexicon and Line.
Lexicon and Line, it does 3 things. They are communications consultants. They teach professional business writing and speaking courses, and they are research and data evaluation experts.
And you can find everything about Lexicon and Line at lexicononline.com. Please give them a visit, and thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast, Lexicon and Line.